Welcome back to the Fake News Network. I'm your host, Julio.
And I'm your host, Lusimba. Coming up, food more addictive than heroin or cocaine?
All this and more will be answered, but first we have a special interview with what some like to call the Rough Rider.
That's right. We have an exclusive interview with the former president as a part of our week-long series on how past leaders and their ideologies measure up to today's standards.
Let's dive right in with Julio.
I'm proud to announce that joining me today, we have the 26th President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt Jr.
Why, thank you for having me. It's not that often that a busy man like me gets to do these things.
Explorer, author, soldier, and president, you've done it all, Mr. Roosevelt.
I sure have, and while doing so, I always say, speak softly and carry a big stick.
Speaking of big sticks, let's go right into our first question. What's your stance on foreign affairs?
I just told you the whole deal with the big stick diplomacy is that if I am able to interact and negotiate with these other countries in order to be taken seriously, I have to show them I mean business.
I remember something like that in my high school American history class now. So basically you just showed off your military power to keep the peace, right?
And to keep others at bay and remind them that they're messing with the United States. That's the entire point of my powerful Great White Fleet that sailed across the globe.
Right. So tell me, I remember this other big thing you did, but I just can't name it.
You must be talking about my corollary, expertly named the Roosevelt Corollary. I just felt the U.S. had a duty to all the other countries in the Western Hemisphere. The U.S. was going to exercise international police power in flagrant cases of such wrongdoings or impotence.
That's open to interpretation, but what do you mean flagrant cases?
I particularly mean any of these European powers that have ever had control over other countries here in the Western Hemisphere.
Seems like a very righteous plan to defend those that might be preyed on. Speaking of righteous, you seem to stand up for the economy against big companies, as you go by another name, the Trust Buster. Care to explain that?
That was nothing. I simply kept my part of the square deal. I despise those giant corporations that have banded together to form this corrupt trust. Take the Northern Security Company. You have half the whole railroad industry in the hands of a few companies. That's just not right.
Ah, yes. The Supreme Court presided over the Northern Securities Co. versus the United States case and forced them to dissolve the monopoly. You're the first president to strictly enforce this term in the Antitrust Act.
Don't forget how I busted about 40 trusts.
You said the square deal a little earlier. Wasn't that one of your political policies?
Yes, it was. It was simply the 3 C's: conservation of natural resources, control of corporations, and consumer protection. No offense, but not many of the presidents before me stood up to big businesses like I did. They also didn't look out for the little guy either.
That first C you mentioned earlier, conservation of resources, reminded me. You're a stark conservationist, aren't you? Something socially, conscious for a president to consider.
Strange, isn't it? An expert hunter like me was one of the biggest advocates for many species or other plants. But as I spent a lot of time out there, I hated to see it start to go away. That's why I founded the U.S. Forestry Service. The purpose was to conserve forests for use in the future. I also wanted to ensure this nation's resources had some sustainability.
I'm starting to see where you typically stand when it comes to political ideology. Tell me about the progressive movement. I heard you were a bigger supporter of the social issues brought up at the time.
And who wouldn't be? If you read Upton Sinclair's book, you'd also want to see some changes too. To make sure Americans are getting their meat served to them in the cleanest procedures possible, I passed the Meat Inspection Act and created the Drugs and Food Administration.
Amazing to see how these have both impacted the country today and are still valid.
It's just part of my job to do what is right.
Well, Mr. Roosevelt, I feel as though everything you told me, you most likely are classified as liberal. You want to defend weaker countries in our domain in the Western Hemisphere from other powers. You're also against the business using corrupt tactics to reign over the economy and to protect people. And lastly, your concerns for the environment and the concerns for people's health in the progressive movement.
Well, thanks for having me on.
It was all my pleasure. Wow, as always, that absolutely is on top of things as an expert reporter. One can only admire his God-given talent.
So what can we conclude from what we've learned today? Well, even though President Roosevelt fits the description of a somewhat liberal individual, he generally seems to get his motivation from issues he personally believes were important to himself and the country.
His love and observations of the wilderness possibly influenced his actions towards more conservation laws and regulations. And
He really did show the world that he carries a big stick.
His crusade against political machines in his time as governor of New York possibly fueled his disgust for corruption and in turn dislikes towards monopolies and their toxic impact on competition in the economy.
Of course, this is only our interpretation of the president. The rest is up to you. Now, if you wouldn't want your kid getting addicted to coke or heroin, why would you want them to get addicted to food? More of this coming right up after this short break.
I think that was it.
Yeah.
I don't know.